how are you spending your time these days, man? I mean, you just mentioned to me that executive chairman, as you know, I've been in that role before. It is a lot less intense than being CEO. But walk me through kind of how you're spending your days.
So yeah, Brian, as you mentioned, I've been leaving the CEO role a few months ago. This after 10 years in the trenches as a co-founder, CEO, of a big tech company in Brazil. And I'm taking a lot of time to with my son, to read, to meditate, to exercise, to travel a bit. To be honest, at first it was really, really tough, much more tougher than anticipated. I think when you are hooked on the adrenaline and the dopamine of running a business, of building a business, of taking decision all the time, it's really tough to resettle, to teach yourself how to fill your time with simple things, with meditation, with just reading, being less anxious. So it's a great reconditioning, to be honest.
When I think about the role, as a founder, I've talked about this before, but there's really you have three roles. You're the founder, which is like culture and thinking about vision, all those key things. Then there's the CEO, which is like, hey, I got to deliver on this quarter, and what's the next year plan look like? And then as the chairman, a lot of times you've got to think, as chair, you're thinking about the future, you're thinking about the long term, you're thinking about which. When you're in the middle of running a company, particularly like a company that's hit certain level of growth and size, it becomes super hard to think about all three of those things, right? Is that, can you relate to that? And is that something that you think about in terms of your evolved role?
Yeah, completely. I think there is this huge dialectic between the day-to-day and having to run the business and meet the OKR and the financial results of the quarter, and that's a lot of pressure. And sometimes I guess this pressure from the day-to-day takes you away from the vision and takes you away from what really matters, So I think you are completely right, and I completely relate to your statement, Brian.
Were there times on the journey where you felt like, you needed to focus more on one or the other, or like walk us through a little bit of, of kind of the evolution of Loggi, because, if you look at your LinkedIn profile, you had, you had a previous business, Go James, and, you co-founded that, ran that for a year. And then your description says epic fail. And then just a few months later, you founded Loggi. So talk a little bit about what happened there, and then, maybe you could talk me through the eras of Loggi if you were to kind of break it up into different eras.
I started my career in the financial market, in M&A, doing slides and financial models, and it was a great school for me. But when I was there, I always felt like a misfit, because I think all my life I was a bit of a nonconformist, And for me, after 2-3 years working in finance, building something from scratch was kind of the obvious thing to do. So in 2012, I founded Go James, which was an Uber before Uber in São Paulo. But it was an epic fail. I mean, I did everything wrong, from product design from go-to-market. But we launched the product, it gained traction. But long story short, after a few weeks, we were shut down by regulation, like that. So the taxi mafia came after us. We were securing a Series A, but when we got a term sheet, then the term sheet vanished because investors were spooked and afraid of this regulation aspect. And I had no other choice but to stop the business. So it was a really tough moment, but also I managed to extract a lot of learning from that, and particularly out of the importance of dealing with regulation in Latam, in Brazil, and to come along with a really consistent strategy. But I closed the business. I spent 3 days depressed in the couch of my best friend in Rio, and after this, I thought, wow, okay, so rather than delivering people or transporting people, which was the application of Go James. Let's use the power of technology to deliver things, to transport goods, and ergo came the idea of creating Loggi with this vision of connecting Brazil, of creating this UPS 4.0 for the world, for Brazil, and truly to deliver anything, anywhere within the country.
And was you mentioned that you learned some things in Go James that what was applicable that you learned that immediately applied to Loggi, and talk us through a little bit about those kind of early days as you're building Loggi.
Mm-hmm. All right, so a few learnings. I think the first one, as I mentioned, was the importance to come along with a regulation strategy. So in the case of Go James, like 2 days after we launched, the taxi mafia came after us. In the case of Loggi, I think we have to think a lot about how to deal and to construct a sustainable relationship with the drivers without having an employer-employee relationship, because I knew that this would be the end goal, but the incumbents will use to come after me, if eventually the business will work. And I was right. After, I think 1 month after we launched, we received this big injunction from Ministério Público do Trabalho, which is the equivalent of the Department of Justice working on labor relationship, because they were saying like, you can do what you do, you can use independent contractors to deliver things, and et cetera, et cetera. And of course, over time, we were managed to prove them wrong, and we managed to defend ourselves very well, and all the cases we got. But since day one, we came along with a really, really, really coherent and well-thought strategy to shield ourselves from regulation risks. I think like a second key learning I got from Go James was that when I created Go James, at first I really thought that technology was a commodity, and I could do an MVP, outsourcing everything, and then little by little we will internalize the team. I think I could not be more wrong in retrospect. I think it was a key learning. This is why when I created Loggi, my first focus when building the team was to find a great technical co-founder, Arthur, and to really work on bringing great engineering talent, great product talent, and great design talents. So I think it was a very important learning too.
Walk us through those first 6 months of the operations of Loggi. What were you trying to accomplish? I know it was a long time ago, as a decade ago, but what were you trying to prove, and what were the key insights? Where was it clear from the very beginning? You're like, oh, this is going to work, or was there talk us through that?
So first thing, I was broke, so I had put all of my personal money into Go James. And I was in the red, both in France and Brazil, because I'm a French guy who happens to live in Brazil. So I was literally like cheque especial in the red in Brazil and in the red in France. So I was literally broke, but I had this strong vision. I knew that could work. And I also needed money. I needed to create an amazing team, because I wanted to hire great tech talents, and wanted to be able to start the business. So to bootstrap everything, you also need a bit of liquidity. So it was a crazy moment where you got this chicken and egg problem. No funding, you get no team, you get no funding, and so forth. So it was tough, but it was also magical. And I always recall of this initial moment as, to be honest, one of the best moments in my life, because so I was broke. And I was dividing an apartment with my best friend Duccio, and I was late of 3 rent with him. But I went to see him and told him, like, man, I got this idea. I really think it can work. And he told me, like, man, don't worry about the rent. I got you. And also, do you happen to own an advertising agency, a super cool one in Italy? And he told me like, and I'm also going to give you some space for you to start a company there, And out of the sudden, I had this amazing space, super cool agency, my own room and I started to pitch investors. And the funny thing is that because I had failed at GoGems and I was very candid about my failure and very transparent about all the things I did wrong, I managed to earn their trust. And in 2 weeks, I managed to assemble a really important seed round. At the time, it was $1 million. Nowadays, $1 million is nothing. But back then in 2012, it was huge. And so I managed to get the commitment of some really good investors. And with that, I started to assemble the team, and it's crazy because I think a lot about entrepreneurship. It's about intelligence, grit, and consistency. But it's also about luck, And I think I was really lucky of having this friend at this moment of my life. I was very lucky to meet this subset of angel investors and seed investors. And so, yes, I started to assemble the team. We put together a prototype in 3-4 months. Of course, it was not working. So I was doing everything. I was doing sales, operation management, all the legal things, all the financial things, all the product which I loved. It was tough. I was not seeing friends. I was not going out. I was just working. But it was work with passion, and it was a great time. Yeah.
So in some sense, your best friend was your first angel investor in some ways, right?
Yeah,
the office space,
exactly.
And let's.
Exactly.
I want to double click a little bit on this trust thing that you mentioned, because I think that's a really interesting insight. You kind of turned in, as self-described epic failure, and you turned that in as an opportunity to build trust. Why do you think that enabled you to land that initial $1 million? Was it clear that you had experienced something that gave you an insight into the problem? And why do you think that it built trust by sharing all of your kind of mistakes that you made?
I think the essence of a good entrepreneur is curiosity. Is the fact that you look at things and you want to learn and you want to uncover a problem and you want to keep learning and to keep solving things. And I think that always curiosity goes hand in hand with humility. You can't really learn if you are not self-aware, if you're not able to paddle back if you see you commit a mistake. So I think you have to be very curious, but also very humble and be able to say to the people that you learn from your mistakes. I think this is, and overall, I think for an adult person, it's really tough to say that I was wrong. I think sometimes it's the hardest thing to say, actually. And I think that when you come and see investors and say, this is why I was wrong, this is why I did wrong, and you show this sense of humility, which is actually a good way to entrust. Each time I started a board meeting at Loggi SEO, I always started with what keeps me awake at night, with the problems, with what we did wrong, and you always keep the fluffy stuff for the end of the board, or you don't even use it, So I think this was essential, to combine curiosity and grit, but also with this sense of humility. I think this is, as an individual, not only as an entrepreneur, something which allows you to gain trust.
And how do you walk the line of the balance of like projecting a lot of confidence in what you're able to do, while at the same time, balancing that humility? What's the like? And did you feel like you always maintain that balance? And so talk about how, what's the balance there that you need to have, and then talk about the evolution of the business as you grew.
Right. So obviously I like to think that I was always balanced. I guess if you talk to other people, they will tell you the opposite. I think this is how it works. But I think you have to try your best all the time. I think when it comes to being confident, about, you have to be really clear in how you state your mission statement, your vision, and this is something you can accomplish in 5 minutes. And same way you are clear about your mission statement and your vision, you can also be very clear about what you are doing wrong. So I think it's just being transparent and about the journey of the company. This has been an interesting one. When it comes to mission, vision versus the day-to-day, because when we started Loggi, I think we had this very coherent vision of connecting Brazil. Of really like, we knew that logistics was a key bottleneck to the Brazilian economy. And so we really wanted to harness the power of tech to create from scratch this UPS 4.0, to create from scratch this new Correios, which will be the equivalent of the USPS in the US. But as you can imagine, you won't be able to build a UPS 4.0 in 1 month or even a decade. It takes a lot of time. So what was essential for us, and I think for everyone, when you want to tackle a big problem, is always to start with a niche, with a small subset of your problem, and try to first solve this niche and then grow from there. So in our case, we started, although we wanted to connect Brazil and deliver anything to anyone, we started with a really simple use case, which was super fast delivery within the city. So from A to B within São Paulo. So we started delivering documents, small packages, food, but always with very simple logistics and simple products. It was kind of an Uber for motorbikes. It was like from A to B, an app, A to B within the same city, and it flies. There is no complexity operationally. Everything is asset light. In terms of AI, using of algo to optimize the problem. It's not a tough problem. It's from A to B. You just need to use mobile to do the allocation of drivers. So this is how we started in 2013. And based on this use case, we gained a lot of traction. So a few months after we launched, we managed to secure our Series A with Monashis, amazing investors and partners, by the way. But we wanted much more. We wanted to once again, to connect Brazil. And to connect Brazil, so to do from A to B, not within the city, but A to B anywhere within the country. And to be able to deliver A to B everywhere within the country, this is when things really started to get complicated, much more complicated. Because if you want to send the goods, let's say from São Paulo to a small city within the northeastern region of Brazil, you first need to pick up this package in São Paulo, then you need to bring it to a huge sortation facility where you're going to bundle packages together and you're going to create optimized routes within these big sorting facilities. Then you're going to transfer these routes on an airplane, on a truck, then come to a small hub, then a smaller hub to finally deliver with a motorbike driver or a small car within this remote city. So you can see that out of the sudden, from A to B within the same city, we went to A to B within the same country. And it was really, really, really hard because out of the sudden, we need to operate physical facilities. We were no longer just a technology company. We were a technology company operating in the physical world, and we need to learn how to operate these sorting centers, these hubs. It was a much more complex problem, So, and as always, when you create a business plan, so we forecasted a revenue of X and the cost of Y. And when we launched this product in 2015, the revenue was 50% of X and the cost was 2XY. So out of the sudden, we got a lot of burn and a lot of complexity. But it was also really fascinating, and we managed over time to solve this problem. We managed to learn to connect all of these facilities together. We managed to create this network covering all of the country. Now we we deliver to 92% of Brazilian in the country of the size of Europe. So long story short, this has been the story of the company from doing this Uber for motorboys in São Paulo to really this fully fledged UPS 4.0 in Brazil.
Was the vision always clear from the very beginning of what you wanted to eventually become? And then at what point did you go from like the A to B in, neighborhoods in São Paulo to this kind of larger vision?
Yeah, so this was always the vision that to really build, that to connect Brazil. It has always been our motto. At first, we thought we could achieve it by being 100% asset light. So we thought, okay, we're going to use the sorting facilities of others. We're going to use everything from third parties. And in 2015, we realized that it was not possible, actually. But that sometimes on the value chain, on the logistics network, we need to own and operate some of the nodes ourselves. And so that was really, really important. It was like actually a really frightening decision because we had to break this principle of being asset light. So we were mostly asset light, but a bit asset intensive too. So we became this hybrid company, And I was really afraid of what would be the reaction. And I knew that was the right thing to do. But I was really, really afraid of the market sentiment, how would investors or prospect investors will react, because no one likes being asset intensive. If you can, you would rather be completely asset light. But we thought it was the right thing to do. In hindsight, I think it was the best decision we ever take, because by learning to operate these assets ourselves, we actually created a really strong moat around the business. But yeah, in a nutshell, we had clarity of vision. Sometimes you don't get clarity on execution, how to get there, and you have these very defining moments along the way.
What was the defining moment? Take me through the moment when you're like, like we this vision of asset light is not going to be possible if we want to achieve our mission. And, you said that you had that moment where you were concerned about what the investors would say. You pushed through because you knew it was the right thing. But maybe if you could give the insight of the moment where you're like, okay, we're going to make this leap. And like the first thing that you did when you decided to do that. And what was the like, did it become clear that when did it become clear it was the right thing to do?
Well, yeah. So end of 2014, we started to deliver for e-commerce company, So we wanted to deliver within like the same region and then the state of São Paulo. And the idea was to do it like directly from the warehouse of our customers, and we will send there the drivers with the routes already optimized in the app, and they would pick up everything there and deliver everything from there. So I think it was a beautiful idea, but it was. We were actually like extremely wrong, because of course at a really small scale, okay, if you want to send 10 packages and get one driver to get to the warehouse of your customers to deliver these packages following an optimized route, it makes sense. But what happens when you get 100 packages or 1,000 packages? Out of the sudden, you get a legion of motorbike drivers going to the dock of your customers. It becomes a mess. You lose the packages. Your customers doesn't like you that much anymore, although you provide a good service, because the operation complexity becomes exponential. So after 1 month operating that way with a bit of customer feedback, we realized, okay, like the intuition was great on paper. It was terrible in practice. Let's reset. Let's try to see how we can solve the problem. And we looked at perhaps partnering with other companies, with more old school companies, but it was not getting traction, like being a bit of a clash of cultures. And we thought, okay, let's do it our way. Let's create these sorting facilities to absorb the complexity yourself, and offer a really simple product to our customers, which is, I'm going to be delivering fast everywhere, but we're only going to make one pickup for you, not like multiple pickups. We are creating this insane complexity for you.
What was the you raised a Series B. If I recall, it was with Dragoneer, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. I don't know if I made the intro, but I at least took a call from Dragoneer because they were also an investor in my company. So I think Eric reached out to me maybe, or Mark, I can't remember, one of the two. And when you pitched, your Series B investors, I imagine that's around the time where you're adding the complexity and you're going from asset light to, a more, kind of robust, verticalized platform. Did you pitch the new investors and say, this is what we're doing? So did you identify the investors that believed in that vision? Is that kind of how that happened when you ended up, closing your Series B?
Yeah, you're correct. I was completely straightforward on what was the vision and what we intended to do. So we said, okay, like we started with this Uber for Motorboy. Now let's go heads on creating this UPS 4.0. And this is why I need capital. I will need to open sorting centers. I will need to open small hubs. I will need to finance the ramp up of these assets, because this is the complexity. This is the financial complexity. When you open a sorting facility, you need to think a few years in advance. So I'm buying now the machinery, the equipment to be able to process like 100,000 packages next year. But when you start, there is no client, you get no demand. So that means that you're going to get a lot of unutilized assets and a lot of sunk costs. So we were super transparent on why we needed the money and what we intended to do with that. And it was a really, really good surprise for us, because I think because they had seen it happen at Amazon and then at Mercado Libre, they knew the drill, and they completely bought not only the vision, but also like the execution and the idea of being asset intensive. So I think like, once again, Brian, what's important is to be like always transparent,
you're
sure that you're open. You find the right match.
You're open about the challenges, and you found people that believed in your ability to kind of overcome the challenges. I want to ask about this asset light versus asset heavy, because, you mentioned that at the time investors didn't really want to invest in asset heavy businesses. And then asset heavy verticalized businesses became all the rage, right? When there was lots of capital and you raised, big rounds from SoftBank, and it was seen like from real estate to logistics to everything was like, go heavy and, and go big. And now we're kind of seeing a pullback into more asset light businesses, of course, with a more emphasis on unit economics. How has the kind of business operation changed over the last couple of years, and particularly in the last year or two? What have you, focused on and made a priority, and how have you been able to execute on kind of the shifting landscape?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, you always get the dilemma between asset light and asset intensive. I think asset light is extremely sexy, particularly on the short term, because from day one, your unit economics can look great. When you're asset intensive from day one, and when day 2 or day 600, like unit economics look terrible. And I think that this is why like vision matters. If we get back in time and go back to eBay versus Amazon in 1998, everyone loved eBay. Everyone bashed Amazon, and if you fast forward everything, Amazon had this vision of really like building this logistics infrastructure, building this distribution network with the long-term vision that on the long term, it will allow them to create an edge and a moat. And I think on the long term, they were right. But it requires a lot of vision and a lot of confidence from the founder. So in a nutshell, asset light, in our case for us, was great to maximize unit economics on the short term. And our asset light business, we were already profitable. We were printing money actually out of it. And how do you choose to sacrifice it to build something on the long run? So I think the vision is important. Of course, as you mentioned, you get these waves of investors having more appetite or less appetite for asset light versus intensive. But I think this comes and go, and I think this is why the importance of vision. Right now, everyone seems to be a bit allergic to being asset intensive, but eventually, the interest rate is going to drop. A lot of people, actually, investors, realize that it's a great way to build defensibility. So as soon as, let's say, interest rates drop below 3%, investors come back again. I think in the end, your ability to invest or not in an asset-intensive business is really a function of the cost of capital. So I think we were super lucky, as you mentioned, to ride this wave of quantitative easing and really low interest rate. It allows us to raise a lot of capital. We kept most of this capital in the bank account as we speak. And for us, but was the idea, let's leverage this moment, let's get as much cash as we can to be sure that we can deploy this capital over time in CapEx and really build the network.
So if you were to describe the phases of the business, it's like, okay, early days, you're focused on a super finite problem that you're solving. You're focused on asset light. You're building kind of a profitable business in the beginning, and then the next era is, okay, let's go full stack. Let's verticalize more. Let's asset more intensive, and we'll build a deeper moat around our business because we're solving more of the complex problems. It's much more complex what you did, the second phase, right? Would you describe the kind of the third phase now is like, okay, we've built an amazing company and product, and now we are focused more on optimization. How would you describe this next era, and then what do you think the future looks like?
Of course, overall, if you take a simple review, I think up until 2021, we went from 2015 to 2021, we were in construction mode, so we went from operating in 15 cities to 4,000 cities, and we created an incredibly complex logistics network, so we created this. It was tough, a lot of learning, but we did it. And now, of course, since 2021, we are much more in optimization mode. So we created it now, but let's fine-tune our financial metrics, make sure that we drive operational efficiency, make sure that the quality is always constant everywhere in the country, and it can be complex to always get consistency. I think it's a simple way to look at our history, but I think what's important as a company is to be able to be ambidextrous, so to be able to work on optimization and the importance of financial discipline, operational excellence, of rationalization, and we need that, but also to balance that with keep dreaming, keep building product that our clients will want in the future. So I think this is an exercise we are doing, and we are doing well.
I have just a kind of more of a personal question around you mentioned a lot about the importance of being transparent and humility is an important quality for curiosity and learning, which I totally subscribe to. What's the most humbling experience you've had as a founder?
I think the more humbling experience where I really didn't sleep is why between our Series B and our Series C, we were running out of cash. We literally 2 weeks of cash. And at the same time, because we did some mistakes around repricing, we were paying our partners, we were getting big protests from the drivers in São Paulo. So we were in this situation where our drivers went from loving us to hating our guts in one day. We were running out of cash because we lacked the drivers. We could not perform our deliveries, so our clients hated us, and this is a moment when you get no cash, you need to make for payroll. Drivers hate your guts, clients start hating your guts, you don't sleep well at night. And then, of course, you think of all the mistakes you made. You were too confident in thinking you would get the cash that easily. You were too arrogant in the way you repriced the driver and the way you communicated it. So yeah, it was deep, it was brutal, but we were like, I think at the moment we were a bit lucky. We managed to close our Series C like at the final minute of the game. And then there was a lot of learning from this moment. After Series C, we thought, okay, let's never rely on venture capital again. Let's be much more respectful when dealing with the drivers. And so, in a few months, we managed to break even the business. Actually, we were EBITDA positive. We were generating cash and everything was doing well. And this is precisely when a third bank came along and said, hey, man, do you want some extra money to fuel your endeavor? So it was a huge ups and downs. You went from being completely broke and saying, I'm going to break even everything. And then do you want this a train of cash, and perhaps in retrospect, it was not the best idea to take this train of cash, but yet it was end of 2015. This particular week of no cash in the bank account and unrest from the driver was a really critical moment. I didn't sleep very deeply this moment of my life.
I think it's important for founders to hear that, because there's a lot of founders right now that are having, struggling raising capital. And, I remember at Viva Real, we had, $87 in the bank account, and, 25 people, in the early days, 25 people in the team, and no idea how we were going to make payroll. And, what do you think? How were you able to pull it out at the end when you were able to kind of eke out the round? And what were the key things that you learned from that, besides not getting to the point where you're on fumes and depending on investors? Besides that, what did you learn, and how did you pull it out?
I think it was a mix of perseverance. So I think I could have collapsed myself as an individual because it was too much to take. So this is why. So first lesson was to take care of mental health. Meditating, always do a bit of exercise, talk to someone if needed. So manage to hold. It's important to be able to learn, to hold, and to create the routine to be able to hold as an individual in this very critical moment. So first, to be able to hold. Second thing was to persevere. So I kept on pitching and taking questions from investors at 2 a.m. and sending spreadsheets and explaining why by A, B, and C we will solve everything, etc. So it's a lot of perseverance, and I think a bit of luck. To be honest, I think we were happy to find in Microsoft, the IFC, and our existing investors this willingness to keep on funding the company. But we were also very lucky. So and I think it's important to acknowledge that, because of course.
So let's fast forward to today. I know that you're focusing on kind of you're going internal. Walk me through the transition from going from CEO to chairman, and were investors upset that you were leaving?
Difficult to say. I think to be honest, when I took the decision that for me it would be I need to unwind, was in December of 2021. Actually, November, December was the peak season of Loggi, and my baby son Noah was at the hospital in 1 month and a half. It was not a great moment for him. It was between life and death, and this is why and at the same time I was receiving all the crazy things from the peak of the end of the year. And for me, it was the moment when I realized, okay, I need to unwind a bit, to look at things a bit differently. It's not sustainable to work that much, to not take care that much of your family. So first you need the insight, and it's tough, I guess, for you to say it. I don't want to be CEO because there is a lot of hubris and ego and the power which comes with the CEO position, and also like the adrenaline, the thrill of taking the decision. I mean, I think it becomes a bit of an addiction over time. So, but to recognize it was important, and what was important was the transition. So to pick up the right person, to groom him to the role, and to be sure that in the end I will be still close to Loggi. So I'm still there as executive chairman. I take care of it. I can focus on the part which I like the most, to be honest, vision and what we build, on the long run. So yeah, it was.
How long was the transition, and how do you, as the founder, how do you empower the CEO and not kind of be that lurking hand that's like,
yeah.
kind of, trying to have the puppet strings there? What's the, how has that been for you, and what have you learned about yourself in that process?
Yeah. So to be honest, it was like super tough at first to let it go. So even after I left, I was doing one-on-ones with my former team every week, so every 2 weeks. I just wanted to be knowing what was going on and giving a second opinion. And I realized it was really toxic. It was not good because somehow it was disempowering the existing CEO. So learning to let it go is tough, but it's important. While you're gone, I mean, to have the discipline of keeping yourself like active in the board, but trying to distance yourself from the operation. I think it's the healthy thing to do. Although your heart and your intuition tell you not to do it, I think it's the right thing to do. So, but it's tough. It's tough because it's saying ciao to your baby boy. It's not an easy thing to do.
Who did you talk to before you made the transition, and what advice did you gather, and did you listen to the advice?
To be honest, the person I listened the most was my mom. Like she told me, like, I've never seen you so tired in your life. And then she told me a message she sent me a message written by Steve Jobs on his final days, explaining how somehow he was proud of everything he had done, but he was like really sad and angry that he didn't spend more time with his family. And in the end, which is what matters the most. So I think for me it was the ultimate advice on why and how to do it. Not how, but once you understand the why, then the how becomes natural. So I think in that case, the good advice was from my mom, actually.
Yeah, I think that, if you look around the people in the world that have your best interest, right? And, like selfless interest, like, mom has got to be at the top of the list. And so anyways, you made this transition, and now you're, it sounds like you went from those one-on-ones to, peeling away from that and giving more space to the CEO. How long did the transition take from where you realize you need to probably create space for the CEO, and then how has that been going?
So I think overall it takes from the decision to actually like let it go. It takes 1 year if you want to do it right. And so far it's doing great. I mean, the company is thriving. I mean, we put a CEO, a long friend of mine, Thibaut, who has been our CFO during years. Before that, he co-founded and was the COO of Dafiti, which is the biggest fashion e-tailer e-commerce in Latam. And that's great because Thibaut and I really we got trust. We worked together during years, and we really got complementary profiles. Sometimes I'm more in the clouds, in the vision, in the long-term dream, and Thibaut is a born and practical and really focused executor, which takes operational efficiency very, very seriously. So I think what's important when you create a team is diversity and neurodiversity, to make sure that you assemble people who somehow think together, to extract the best of all the people. And in the case of this tandem between Thibaut and I think we've got amazing diversity, and we managed to complement ourselves, and the results for the company are amazing. So we were fortunate to have a really strong balance sheet. We managed to increase margin and operational efficiency even quicker than we thought. So far so great.
What do you think about in terms of, I know that you're in this kind of introspection phase and you're, focused on meditation, your son, right? How old's your son now? 1.5 years? 2 years?
Yeah, he is 2 years old now.
2 years old. So, super high quality time with the family. My guess is that you'll have an itch to scratch. If I know the pattern of entrepreneurs, and and maybe I'm projecting a little bit on you, because I'm speaking about my personal experience, but having seen the pattern of other entrepreneurs that have gone through a similar process to you, very high intensity, high degree of success, and the dopamine hit, that exists. Maybe you'll go back and do something, and maybe you'll just reconstruct how you do it so that it's more sustainable and less kind of overwhelming. But talk to me a little bit about what your thoughts are for the future and how Fabien is going to put his energy into the next challenge, and what do you anticipate that'll look like?
So I think your projection is right. I can stay in this meditation quality time mode for a while, and I think it's important. I think for sure I will start channeling my energy elsewhere. I just don't know where it's going to be. So to be honest, I'm policing myself, trying not to think about things and not to take meetings and not to because I know myself. As soon as I like something, an idea, I start to be a bit obsessed about it. Of course, you like to think that next time you do it, you will be more balanced, and you won't be that obsessed, and we manage to do everything at the same time. But the truth, I guess, perhaps it's a sad truth for me, but when you start something, I guess you really need to put a really high level of intensity during the first month, the first year. Otherwise, I fear it's going to be like less successful. So this is why, like right as we speak, I'm trying not to get into something because I know that eventually, when I go into something, it's going to be bold and it's going to be intense. And so I'm taking a few more months here.
Well, sorry for being a bad influence on you.
No, perhaps you're the good one. This is how my man works,
I do think that there is, if I can give you a little bit of hope here, like, look, if I were to give some reflections on my, I thought I would take it super easy at one point, and I'm not. But I have become better at balancing like my personal life. I took a vacation during Semana Santa, which I don't think I ever did in the past. And I was able to almost disconnect, fully, like, at least for maybe a couple of days I did, but I did manage to get a few things done. So I think that, I think we have a very similar experience, and having had, a transition from CEO to chairman, and then taking, a 6-month kind of sabbatical, or maybe a year. I don't even know how long it was. Maybe it was even longer if you consider that I wasn't CEO for, 3 years by the time we sold. I think I just want to give you a little bit of hope that it's definitely possible, but you have to be super intentional, and you are being intentional. So, I think that's something that, but I do think that there is, like, you finding your purpose and finding things to put your creative energy into is really important too, right? And it's just about, being able to police yourself the right way. And you'll probably swing the pendulum at points, like, last month during the whole SVB thing, I mean, I developed like physical sickness from the stress of everything. And we were launching a product at the same time. And I was recording for Shark Tank. And I was like, there was, 4 things that were just super overwhelming that happened. And yeah, I found myself like burning the midnight oil and burning the candle at both ends. But then, there was a vacation around the corner and I kind of regained my energy, and then I'm kind of getting back in the swing of things. So I think that you'll be fine. I've confidence, and I think that it'd be too much of a waste for you to not put your energy into something. But my advice to you would be, unsolicited here, would be this next thing that you do. You'll find meaning in everything you do, but I think give yourself the extra time to really feel passionate about it, because you're a creative brain and you can probably get excited about many things. And so I think that being very selective about the thing that you want to put your energy into, I think will save the potential of burnout, because the more passionate you are about the problem, the more likely you are to endure when things get really crazy, which they will. So I think combining the capacity to gauge like how to be long-term in your thinking and not overwhelm yourself and kind of space things out a little bit, while at the same time addressing a problem that you just deeply care about and you feel like is centered around like, your passion. I think those will be 2 key ingredients for you. So sorry for the unsolicited advice.
No, wow. And I could not say it better. I think you are completely right. Thanks, bro.
It's going to be fun, man. Well, listen, and I want to offer up any, conversations if you want to have another chat about, where, when the time is right. I think the family focus, you don't get those first 2 years back with your son. And, it was around the same time that my kids were like 4 and 2, and I got to walk them to school, and those kind of things. So I think that it's super hard. You mentioned the ego, man, because your identity is so connected with like who you are, and it's super hard. You're like, I'm the CEO of this company. It's successful. I gave up financial upside. There's all these things, but I can tell you right now, man, you're disciplined to make that decision. You'll thank yourself like for decades, because those sacrifices, you don't get those back,
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
Well, I'm excited to see what you end up doing, and I'd love to be closer to you in that process, and count on me if you want to brainstorm about anything. I think that your experience is super unique, and I would just encourage you to get closer to Latitude, because I know that you care a lot about the ecosystem. I know we're both foreigners, right? We lived in Brazil for a long time, and I think that similarly, your experience, you were captivated by Brazil. The beauty of like that Litoral Norte. I know that you spent a fair amount of time. Probably that's where you're doing some of your meditating on the beach there. It's an amazing country, and it's an amazing part of the world. And it's an area that I really want to reinvest in, not just in capital, but in like energy, people, advice, network, and elevating the next generation. And so we would love to have you be involved in some degree in any capacity that you're willing to. So if you're looking for a way to ease back in without any commitment, please pick up the phone anytime and shoot me a WhatsApp.
Right. Well, thanks a lot for the invitation. I'm flattered. Huge respect and huge kudos for what you're building, Brian. And now I'm going back to university 3 months to learn something I always wanted to learn. I'm going a deep crash course on machine learning, Python, how to program some stuff myself. But as soon as I'm over this university mode, this learning mode, for sure I'm going to ping you.
Let's have dinner when you're done with that, and maybe a little bit of wine and philosophical thoughts about the future.
Great. Let's
do
that,
man.
Brian.
Thanks so much for making the time. I really appreciate it.